All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News here on the Believe Network on Wednesday, October 16th. Came out of the Giants locker room today, had a to the Giants, to MetLife Stadium. Saquon coming back with the Philadelphia Eagles to MetLife Stadium to face a home crowd, his former home crowd, his former team, friends of his still, Dexter Lawrence, Daniel Jones, and a lot at stake for both teams. The Philadelphia Eagles are reeling. It's not just the Giants who are under pressure here. The Eagles and head coach Nick Sirianni, even coming out of the bye week and getting a win against the Cleveland Browns, up against it to show progress, up against it to show that Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni can make it happen on the offensive side of the ball, that their perceived lack of chemistry is not going to continue to be detrimental, that the Philadelphia Eagles defense is going to start tackling better, and that they're going to look like a team that Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman believed it was when they went into this season, despite Jason Kelsey's retirement, despite Fletcher Cox's retirement. The Eagles as an organization still believing that the investment in Saquon Barkley to add to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts, envisioning getting back to the Super Bowl just short form of a couple years ago, that this was going to be a high octane explosive offense. But the fact of the matter is that no one other than the Washington Commanders has played impressive, consistent football. The Eagles are one of those teams, one of those culprits. And Barkley has a lot to prove, regardless of what he says or how much he's downplaying this return. He has a lot to prove about what he's worth, considering the Giants did not offer him the same kind of money the Philadelphia Eagles did and let him walk out the door. Now, co-owner John Mara, of course, is on the record on camera on HBO Hard Knocks, telling his general manager, Joe Shane, that he'll have trouble sleeping at night if Barkley ends up signing with the Philadelphia Eagles in free agency this past spring. That's exactly what happened. And Barkley's enormous performance in the first week in Brazil against the Green Bay Packers certainly set an interesting tone for how this season was going to begin and the pressure that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll were going to face out of the gate. Now, as the Eagles have had their own problems, the Giants have been navigating the waters as well. And the Giants stand at 2-4. They have wins right now under their belt, both on the road against the Cleveland Browns and the Seattle Seahawks, but 0-3 at home, winless in MetLife Stadium, struggling even to get into the end zone. And the most frightening part now is that they actually went 2-4 in those first 6 games with a relatively healthy team. Malik Neighbors missed 2 games, but a lot of the Giants' primary contributors outside of that remained healthy. Now, that is not the case. Starting franchise left tackle Andrew Thomas, as I'm sure you know by now, out for the season after undergoing surgery on Wednesday morning on his foot for a Lisfranc injury. Devastating news for the left tackle, for the offense, and for the Giants. Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns will play in this game, but dealing with hip and groin injuries respectfully. And more names, including Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson being limited, showing up on the injury report. The Giants up against it. Daniel Jones under pressure. The Giants really in desperation mode. And that puts 2 NFC East teams on the field at 1 o'clock this Sunday in week 7, both in desperation to reignite some momentum, to regain some confidence, to get right. This is going to be a get right game for one of these teams. Which one is it going to be? But outside of the short term, the long-term consequences are much greater. This is, whether the Giants would want it to be or not, whether the Eagles would want it to be or not, this is a statement game, and this is a judgment day for the Saquon Barkley decision, for Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, for John Mara, for Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman on the other side. There is more to both of these teams' seasons than just this one game. But the fact of the matter is, that Saquon Barkley decision, going with Malik Neighbors as your number one option, not bringing Saquon back to augment the offense in tandem with Neighbors to help Daniel Jones, replacing him instead with a Tyrone Tracy Jr., a rookie who has shown some promise in the last couple of weeks, 5th rounder out of Purdue via Iowa. And the replenishment of the offensive line by Joe Shane in free agency, and yet the ignoring of the tackle position in the offseason. No swing tackle added, no offensive lineman signed in the NFL draft. Now they sit here with Andrew Thomas done for the year with the same names prepared to, but needed to step up and resolve the issues. But we know the stats, we know the numbers, we know what happened last year. We know that the Giants internally walked around blaming a lot of last season on Andrew Thomas's injury in week 1. Well, he's down again. He's out again. He's not coming back. And the pressure is on. It's on the Giants. It's on the Eagles. It's on Saquon Barkley. It's on Joe Shane. It's on all of the principals in this game, from Daniel Jones to Jalen Hurts on down. The winner of this game is going to breathe a huge sigh of relief. The loser of this game is going to be in turmoil. It could be Nick Sirianni and the Eagles. It could be Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, and the Giants. And when you think about what the Giants face here, as I prepare to get to our questions here on Talkin Ball Live, I see the questions rolling in. Thank you so much, all the loyal viewers and listeners and followers, even during these exciting baseball playoffs, you guys checking in and talking Giants and talking NFL with me. I really appreciate it. As Jacob says, kicking us off, smash that like and sub button for the best reporter in the business. Thank you so much, Jacob, for always being here and for saying that. But thinking of the Giants' ramifications here, yes, a loss would put them at 2-5, and there would still be 10 games to play in this season. But think about, first of all, if you lose to the Eagles here as the Giants, with Barkley doing a lot of the damage to you after letting him go to your rival, that's a bad thing, number one. Number two, a negative development would be that would put the Giants this season at 0-3 in the division after losing close games, but losing nevertheless to the Washington Commanders and to the Dallas Cowboys already. So a loss to the Eagles would put you 0-3 at division. It would put you 0-4 at home. And entering this game, the Giants now stand with a record under Joe Shane and Brian Daboll of 1-9-0 in their meetings with the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles since that tandem took over at the start of the 2022 season, the year they went to the playoffs. If you fall to 1-10-0 against the Cowboys and Eagles, 0-4 at home, 0-3 in the division, and losing to Saquon head-to-head, not to mention they've already been outscored by the Eagles 151-97 in this rivalry so far in their 5 meetings the last 2 years. All those numbers, all those stats, they should explain the stakes that the Giants are facing. They should adequately explain the stakes and the consequences that could come from the Giants losing this game, and losing not just to the Philadelphia Eagles, but most importantly to Saquon Barkley. And that leaves me sitting here thanking all of you for being here. We're going to get into more than just the Giants. I want to talk a little Devontae Adams. I want to talk a little Amari Cooper, whatever NFL questions you have as well. I want to dive into that too here on Wednesday, October 16th, as the NFL season is in full gear. If you already saw it, great. If not, please check out at some point our latest episode of First Down with Benny Fowler. It is our weekly recap with the Super Bowl champion, former NFL wide receiver of the entire league. Benny puts us ahead of the curve on a lot of things. I thought our conversation about the Detroit Lions this week was especially poignant. Benny said even before the Aiden Hutchinson injury, he thought the Lions needed to add a pass rusher. So he not only do they absolutely need to envision, or do they need to add one, but he could see them in the market even for 2. And what do you know? We talked about Hassan Reddick as one of the many names to keep an eye on. And you already see days after we host that podcast, that name percolating and hovering around the Detroit Lions as a team that has checked in on Hassan Reddick, the former Philadelphia Eagle, and the Jet holdout who has switched agents to Drew Rosenhaus. But of course, we wouldn't be able to do this without our sponsors, and we are sponsored here by MyBookie. MyBookie is celebrating their 10th year anniversary, rolling out the red carpet for bettors. They have risk-free Thursdays, so check my social media here on Thursday, October 17th for the latest risk-free bet, and also for my Pat's picks every week. Now, I'm sure you guys are aware of this by now. I'm sure you made some money off of it already, but if you're not, I was 10-3-1 against the spread in week 6. And my Pats picks were 2-1 on my top 3. Not to mention that my props, all those giant sprinkles for the Giants games every week, I had some of those rolling in as well. Bengals -2 second half, Tyrone Tracy Jr. receiving yards ladder. All 3 of those hit 16, 26, 36 yards and over all hit. Daniel Jones anytime touchdown didn't hit, but if you sprinkled it out, if you spread the money around, not to mention those game picks, you came out way ahead in week 6 with Pat's picks. So if you go to MyBookie's link on all of my social media profiles, so my handle basically everywhere is PL on NFL. That's Instagram, TikTok, Threads, YouTube here on the PL on NFL YouTube channel. And on X, my handle is P Leonard NYDN for New York Daily News. There is a link on all of those social media profiles. If you click on that, and if you open an account with MyBookie, your first deposit, use the promo code at the cashier. Use the promo code PATSPICKS, PATSPICKS, and you will get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. It's a great deal. You have a lot of fun, and we're going to help you win. MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. So thank you to MyBookie for that sponsorship, for being here with us, keeping Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard rolling. Also, of course, as you know, sponsored here by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. Natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. You can see Boom right here over my shoulder. The Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. There it is. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code right here, Talkin Ball 25, or just access it through the QR code on your screen, take you right there, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. So right now, that means a bag costs you only $30, and that's a month's supply. So start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Remember, subscribe and save offer. Use that code. You'll get the discount, and on we go. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. It's an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar. Convenient for on-the-go coffee drinkers. Takes me 10 seconds to make an Estate 98 iced coffee. It's delicious, and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte. Go to estate98.com/talkinball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. And off we go with Jacob. Remember, if you want your comment or question answered first or elevated to the top of the chat, please purchase a super chat or a super sticker. I will see it, and you will jump right to the top of the queue. You will be next in line. If not, just please hit that like button while we are here, while we are live. Hitting that like button tells other people we're here and encourages more Giants and NFL talk, more people to join this continually growing community that we have here on YouTube and on the Believe Network. And thank you to everybody listening on the audio version of this podcast on the Believe Network. That's on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, you're able to listen. And please subscribe, rate, and review if you're listening. And also, if you're an audio listener, try us out one night on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard live on YouTube. Jump in here on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL. Subscribe. You can have notifications on. It'll let you know when we are going live. You can go live from your computer, your phone, your TV, wherever you are, wherever it's convenient. Thank you for being here, and off we go. All right. Jacob Petruzzi says, few questions to start us off. Is Malik Neighbors trending in the right direction? He was today. On Wednesday, he was in a red non-contact jersey at practice and limited in practice. So the step would be that he goes through that version of practice, and if his body and his and his head, and he goes through that and comes out of that on the other end feeling good on Thursday and doesn't have any symptoms that are triggered by that activity and that exertion, then he would progress in the protocol and ramp up his participation in practice and eventually be able to show that he can fully participate in a practice in order to get cleared by an independent neurologist and then play on Sunday. I would say, as we sit here on Wednesday night, it's a possibility that Neighbors will play on Sunday, but it is not a guarantee. So it is purely based on how he progresses, clearly based on listening to Brian Daboll saying that Neighbors is feeling better and he's making progress and he's optimistic. All of those are sending the arrows pointing in the right direction of Neighbors possibly playing on Sunday. But it will depend on how he reacts and how his body reacts each day. That's where we stand. Jacob says, am I crazy to see us going 3-1 going into the bye? I wouldn't call you crazy, Jacob, because this NFL season has certainly proven that if the NFL is anything right now, it is unpredictable. We already knew that, but it feels like that gets reinforced every year. So the Philadelphia Eagles are not the Philadelphia Eagles of yesteryear, right? Jason Kelsey's gone, Fletcher Cox is gone, Jordan Mailata is out for this game. A lot of criticism of the head coach there. You could make a strong argument for the fact that it almost felt like Nick Sirianni was acting like he was coaching for his job last week against the Cleveland Browns. You could even speculate that Nick Sirianni and Brian Daboll are both coaching for their jobs in a certain way in this game, based on the amount of pressure there is on them in this specific season. So I think there's an opportunity for the Eagles against the Giants, but there's an opportunity for the Giants against the Eagles as well. So I would not say that the Eagles are unbeatable here or that the Giants couldn't win this game. I do think that the Giants' injuries with Andrew Thomas especially makes it very difficult for them. I think as much as the Giants' defense has made progress, I am not going to believe that the Giants could be capable of that type of 3-1 run going into the bye that you just said until their offense shows me something more. The Seattle game obviously was encouraging, but to have that kind of egg laid at home against Cincinnati, and to see the Giants grasping for answers coming out of that game, almost like they didn't know where to turn, very discouraging. And I think for me, I think 1-3 in this stretch is more likely than 3-1. But that, again, unpredictable league. You have the Eagles who are beatable, but who have some really high-end talent. You have the Pittsburgh Steelers on a Monday night on the road. Now, it looks like they're going to Russell Wilson. Then it's kind of an unknown there, but their defense is excellent. So the Giants already can't score, and then they're going on the road against the Steelers. After that, you have the Washington Commanders, who they lost Jonathan Allen on defense. That's a big loss on the interior of the defensive line. Maybe that game could turn into more of a shootout. But again, high scoring offense. The Giants were fortunate to keep them out of the end zone when they played last time and held them to 7 field goals. That was helped by a lot of penalties and false starts by Washington's offense that it seems like they've cleaned up in the red zone. So I think that that's a dangerous, scary game, assuming Washington's healthy. Again, we don't know how healthy Washington or the Giants will be at that point, but we know the Giants are taking some real big hits here. And then the Carolina Panthers in Germany, who the heck knows? Everyone should be beating the Panthers right now, but it's been that kind of year for the Giants. You don't know what you're getting week to week. Maybe just the fact they're playing away from MetLife Stadium in that game will help them. Does Daniel Jones get benched at the bye week? Jacob, to be honest with you, I think I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think Daniel Jones is the best quarterback on the Giants roster. And I think that if Brian Daboll benches Daniel Jones that late, okay, so right now they're 2-4 and they have 4 games before the bye week. So presumably to bench Daniel at the bye, you're saying that they probably have only 3 wins by that point. So they're 3-7 at that point. So if they're 3-7 going into the bye and benching Daniel Jones at that point, to me, the season's already cooked. You're already a cooked goose, as the Joe Shane, Brian Dable year 3, build goes. So I'm not sure if at that juncture it even truly makes sense. I mean, from an injury guarantee perspective, like avoiding the injury guarantee and getting him off the field later in the season when the season's already lost, yes, that could be a rationale for it. But I keep coming back to that would be Brian Dable's last ditch effort. If he were to bench Daniel Jones, he can't go back from that. Once he benches Daniel Jones, he's pulled that plug, he's played that card, and he can't play it again. So to me, if you think Daniel really is the thing holding them back, then you're benching him before it gets out of hand, right? So let's say they're low scoring in this game as well, and they get blown out by Saquon Barkley and the Eagles, and Daniel plays really poorly and is a major reason they lose the game. To me, that's the earlier juncture to pull the plug or make a change to try to, it's really damned if you do, damned if you don't, though, for Brian Dable in that sense, because if you do that early, now the Drew Lock thing has to work or else. But if you stick with Daniel Jones and you ride it out, then you may look back at it one day and say, well, I knew I should have made a change, but I was too afraid of the consequences to do it, or I knew ownership didn't want it, or whatever it is. So I personally don't think, also, this is my opinion, I don't think benching Daniel Jones is fixing or solving the Giants' problems. I know that he's made some mistakes. I know there were some of his throws or decisions in the Cincinnati game were very costly. Of course, he contributed in a big way to that loss, no doubt about it. But I think it's disingenuous to point at the Giants right now and say that with a good quarterback, everything's fixed. I don't agree with that. We had conversations after the Cincinnati game about, I think somebody said if you add Josh Allen to this team, that the Giants would be cooking. And it's like, well, you could add Josh Allen to any NFL team and they would be cooking. That's not what's happening here. That's not realistic. And that's a one-man show in Buffalo. They have their own problems, which we can get to in a little bit. Will, what's going on? How you doing? Will says, is our quarterback room that bad that we continue to risk trotting Daniel Jones on the field, risking injury, and then hampering our cap situation next season? See, Will, I come at this from, so first of all, to answer your question, when we watch them for weeks on end, months on end, spring OTAs, training camp, preseason games, early regular season, Daniel Jones is the best playmaker and the most skilled player of the 3 quarterbacks in the Giants quarterback room. He just is. Drew Lock does throw a pretty deep ball. He can operate smoothly at times. He does take more chances. He's riskier, though, so he tends to throw some interceptions in that regard. They're all tough players. Obviously, DeVito can run. Doesn't see the field as well as the other 2. But I think, Will, that first of all, Daniel Jones is the best quarterback of that group. Secondly, you asked about why keep risking injury and hampering the cap situation. I think, you're going to get a different answer to this depending on who you talk to now. So this is my opinion. I think that this general manager and coach need to win some games here. I think that there's pressure here this season. I've been operating on that since day one, on that idea, on that belief, on that information. And I don't think benching Daniel Jones just for the injury guarantee, even if it costs you wins, is the way that they can go here. I think if you're benching him because you believe the guy you're putting him in for is going to, because you're doing it to improve the team to win games now, because you need to win games, I would buy that as a strategy. I would not buy the strategy of let's just tank and get a high draft pick. Like this regime, in my opinion, cannot do that. They cannot lose enough games to have the draft picks that you're thinking of and still feel confident about their jobs. Luann says Giants and Washington are better than Eagles and I think you mean and Cowboys. The Giants defense gives you some belief. Their offense is not there yet. You need it to get there for sure. That's one reason you need Neighbors back. The one silver lining with the Giants offense, obviously, is that Neighbors and Tracy together, with Tracy as your number one back now, maybe you can reach another level offensively with that personnel. Now, of course, right when you get to that point, Andrew Thomas is done for the year. And that's going to be a problem, especially with how Daniel Jones or whatever quarterback is back there is going to operate. So I think the Andrew Thomas, what we saw last year, I know you want to think that it will be better, but last year, if not to scratch at old wounds, but during the stretch of 8 games that Andrew Thomas was out to start the season, including the week 1 game against Dallas where he got hurt early in the game, right? Or relatively early in the game. In those 8 weeks last season, the Giants scored 8 total touchdowns. Not only that, they scored 4 of them in the second half against Arizona. So they scored 4 touchdowns in the second half against Arizona in week 2. In the other 7 games without Andrew Thomas or with him in the 1 game in Dallas, they scored 4 touchdowns total in those 7 games. They went 2-6 in those 8 games, and they averaged 11.8 points per game as a team, which included a defensive touchdown against the Miami Dolphins. So that's what Brian Daboll's offense with Saquon Barkley last year instead of Malik Neighbors did when Andrew Thomas was out. And if you remember, Daniel Jones last year, without Andrew Thomas in the game, his process, his throwing process, the protection, it all speeds up, right? When he doesn't trust that protection and he starts taking bigger hits. I know everyone's focused on the injury guarantee, but what about just the ability to perform at a high level at the position because he doesn't trust that he's not going to get hit quickly? That's a major concern. Danny Dudd says, has Mara finally seen enough of Daniel Jones? We all know he decides when a quarterback change is made. No indication of that yet, Danny. No indication of that yet. I think if John Mara is honest with himself and with his team, yes, he knows Daniel Jones needs to play better than he did against the Cincinnati Bengals. But I would think he watched that game the same way as I did and said, there were more problems on that field than Daniel Jones. I mean, the final 4th down where I think people wanted Daniel Jones to throw to Wan'Dale Robinson and not Darius Slayton, I was not sure exactly what had happened on his decision-making there too. When I went back and watched the film, you see that BJ Hill gets a pressure up the middle past John Michael Schmitz, and Daniel Jones gets rid of the ball once he sees that D lineman about to, charge into his lap. And so there are details and wrinkles of plays and, events that occur that aren't always as obvious, but it's not just the QB. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, Daniel Jones has played great. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying that I do reject the notion that this is a Daniel Jones and only a Daniel Jones problem here with the Giants. I think that that's probably what some leaders of the Giants want you to think, but that is certainly not the reality of what is happening with their team and why they are losing these games. It's more nuanced than the quarterback. Luann says, I predicted when the season started that the Eagles and Dallas would be on the bottom and Giants and Washington would be on top. And I was pretty much right. The Giants should be 5-1. Luann, you were right about Washington. We can't play that game, though, of they should be a certain thing because the NFL is such a tight league that a lot of these teams around the league, they can all point to 2 games they've played at least so far and said, man, if that had gone the other way, this would be way different. Like, for example, you know, the Jets could sit there and say, we only lost to the Bills by 3 and there were these penalties called and, yeah, that interception, but if we just connect on this, like we easily could have won that game. And instead of being 2-4 and the Bills being 4-2, we'd both be 3-3. Yeah, but you didn't. You know what I mean? Like that's the issue with that. I mean, you're right that the listen, the Giants defense has played way better than I expected them to this season. I did not expect the Giants defense to play this well. Um, kudos to Shane Bowen and to the Giants defense so far for the continued improvement they've made, and especially what they did against Cincinnati, because man, that had to be really frustrating for them coming out of that game and not getting a win after playing like that. Now they did have breakdowns, right? That Joe Burrow touchdown run, that was bad. That was bad schematically. It was bad from the players. It was bad all around. And then at the end, they wore down and Chase Brown gets in the end zone on that touchdown. But, there are some positives that you're seeing. It's not all coming together. And unfortunately, again, it is the Brian Daboll offense that needs to pick it up. Joel, what's going on? He says, Pat, I really hope we don't see Joshua playing left tackle. Yeah, so that's a good opportunity for us to go over really quickly the tackle situation without Andrew Thomas. So I came out of the Giants locker room on Wednesday after talking to all these players, talking to Brian Daboll. My belief is that it felt like what happened in practice today is that Ezeudu played left tackle, Jermaine Illuminor played right tackle, Evan Neal was still a backup, and Illuminor said that he prefers to stay on the right. He said, I'll go to the left side if they want me to, but I prefer to stay on the right side, and I trust Ezeudu on the left. The Giants have put their faith in Ezeudu, consistently said they believe in him. And also Evan Neal was kind of lobbying to play a little bit more. Like he said, yeah, it's a tough situation, implying essentially that he was still grinding like behind the scenes and not getting the first team reps. Like it's not like there's a competition of him and Ezeudu right now. Like Josh Ezeudu is the guy. In fact, we'll see, but I genuinely think that even if Illuminor was moved to the left, I think that they would put Ezeudu at right tackle and not Evan Neal, even though Evan Neal has been working as the backup right tackle more so than Ezeudu. Ezeudu has been working around at different spots, but I don't get the sense that they intend to play Evan Neal unless they absolutely have to, which, is kind of an under discussed storyline that, their number 7 overall pick from 2022 is essentially somebody they won't put on the football field. He has not played a snap in either special teams or on offense this season. But yeah, the Josh Ezeudu playing left tackle, we've said this a million times. Great guy. I hope he succeeds. I want him to succeed. I like him a lot. But we've seen that he is not able to do that and hold up over the course of a game. That it has led to a Daniel Jones injury in the past last season. Now, that was not fair to Josh Ezeudu last year because he was training as a guard in camp and then he was moved to tackle. So I guess the Giants' latest argument is that now he's had essentially a full year plus under his belt working at tackle. So he's more prepared to do that. We'll see if that comes to pass. It would be refreshing if that was the case. The Eagles' pass rush has struggled, so you could be walking into a good first opponent to get Josh Ezeudu's feet wet there. Then again, you could worry that, maybe Bryce Huff finally wakes up because he has a favorable matchup, against a Josh Ezeudu, whatever it is. You just don't know how the Giants will hold up there with Josh on the left because of what we've seen in the past. You can only go on the precedent and on the football we've seen. You guys and I all saw this coming as far as the need for a swing tackle. Brian Baldinger was one of many people I talked to, sources in the offseason, for a story about the Giants offensive line around the draft. And one thing that was very clear to a lot of people was that the Giants did need a swing tackle. They needed to invest in some way in a swing tackle. Now, obviously, they went and got a Luminor, John Runyon Jr., Austin Schlottman, the backup, has been hurt, who's out of he's not on his scooter anymore, by the way. I guess his rehab looks like it's starting. But they invested in those two starters, which they also had to do. Then they also signed Greg Van Roten eventually, but they never invested in a swing tackle, and they didn't draft any offensive linemen even to develop at swing tackle in the offseason or in the draft in April. And so now it's coming home to roost. Now it's right back where we were last season, and it's on Josh Azudu, it appears, in this first game against Philadelphia. Again, more to be afraid of Philly in the interior with Jalen Carter as a pass rusher than on the outsides based on how the Eagles have performed so far in the pass rush department. But they do have talent there, if not production, that they've been looking for so far. So it is still something to be concerned about. Luann says the Giants will win. Love the optimism, Luann. Gary says, hi, Pat. Why do we play so tight at home? Daniel Jones, 1-14 in prime time is unacceptable. Yeah, good question, Gary. I think that they desperately want to perform and produce and win for the home crowd, for the Giants crowd, for the Giants fans. I think that they've done so much losing as an organization and as a team. I think that weighs on them. I think the frustration of losing when their offense isn't scoring, right? That compounds. I think their coach is an intense person who gets tight for these big games. I think he gets tightened up, and I think the team kind of follows that. I think that it's a little bit of a walking on eggshells attitude. And I do think that the us against the world mentality they've played with at times in the Cleveland and Seattle games, definitely something they've been able to unlock more on the road. But if you noticed in those games, like the Giants, I think they went scoreless in the second half in Cleveland and still won. So they came out with kind of a reckless abandon and a we're all we got mentality. But it was a nail biter holding on at the end to skate by. And then in the Cincinnati game, in the Seattle game on the road, which was the Giants' best game so far, and their best game in a while overall, I think that you saw even in that victory, the Giants played a certain way for a majority of the game, but at the end, they started to tighten up. They started to clam up. The Giants' defense, even, which had been playing really well, suddenly had huge letdowns at the end of the half and end of the game. And again, you were looking at them nearly giving it away. And so I think you see those qualities even in some of their road wins. I just think it gets magnified at home when the crowd is when they're trying to impress the crowd rather than trying to kind of shove it to the opposition's crowd or prove themselves or kind of hunker down and bunker down type thing against a road crowd. But obviously they get paid to win no matter where they're playing. And this is something that every team has to deal with, right? If you're struggling, your home crowd's on you, you have pressure. I mean, look at Nick Sirianni and the Eagles, right? Sirianni having that back and forth with a fan in the link. The pressure's on in Philadelphia. The pressure's on in Dallas, where the Cowboys are a laughing stock after that performance against the Lions. So it's not just the Giants who have underperformed, but it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. They got to figure their own stuff out, and they can't figure it out at home. And that's, Gary, I do think it's the leadership. I do think it stems from Dable and his style and his demeanor on the sidelines and during game days. But I also think that, week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings, that crowd at MetLife Stadium was disgusted with the Giants, and for good reason. And they were all over them. And I think that's in the back of their minds. Like they haven't been talking about it as much anymore. In fact, Brian Daboll has been doing a lot of random compliments of the fans, especially when they go on the road. And he keeps, he brings that up out of nowhere and references that we have asked him about that in the past. But I think that first game, the players remember that. They know that in the first game of the season, when they laid an egg, the crowd basically told them, we're done with this and we're done with the quarterback, right? That was essentially the message from the crowd coming out of that game. And so I think that's the environment they're walking into. Now, I don't think, I was there at the game the other night. The crowd was behind the team and ready to go, ready to explode and in support of the Giants. And, when the defense was making plays, the crowd was loud, it got loud in there. And, I think it's not like they're waiting to dump on the team now. They're desperately looking for something to happen. But I do think the team is tense because they know, they know how bad it's been. They know that they haven't played well. John Ferraro, thank you so much. John checks in with a couple super chats here. Thank you, John, so much. John checking in with $5, $6 there. John says 0 touchdowns in last 7 primetime games, 1 in 15 lifetime, abysmal at home. Doesn't that equal choke? Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, what a ridiculous stat that is for Daniel Jones, obviously, to have to own. You can't run away from that. You can't hide from that. As much as I've been saying, it's not only on the quarterback, because it's not in my mind. There's a lot wrong, but you can't argue with those numbers. The problem is the Giants re-signed that player and have put their faith big time in that player, and that's their guy. So that's where they're at. I think if you were asking me, hey, could the Giants go out and get Dak Prescott right now and put him on this team or whatever? And Dak has had his own problems, right? You guys are talking about Matt Stafford. I see Mike saying Matt Stafford. Yeah, those type of players would improve your team, in my opinion. But that's not the reality of the situation for the Giants right now. The Giants' reality right now is that they are in a position where their alternatives are Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. And so, it's kind of like if you want to see someone new and a new face, then all well and good. But seeing that new face in the game and hearing that new voice in the huddle is not going to result in better football. That's what I'm saying. So you'll see the change and you'll be glad that the team is trying to shake things up to make progress. But I do not think that a change to either of those players would result in meaningful, consistent progress on offense and with the team. But John, thank you so much. And you're right. Those stats speak for themselves. Those stats say that you're not winning with that player. And the long-term, that's not the long-term answer. That's what those stats say. There's no doubt about it. That's what those stats say. How do you argue? You can't argue with that. Luann says Saquon turned down $14 million a year. He's greedy. He's all about the money. Turned down $14 million a year. No, that's not true. He did not turn down $14 million a year. The Giants didn't offer nearly the amount of guaranteed money. So those numbers, it was about the guaranteed money, and the Eagles offered him significant more guarantee. And also, Luann, remember, it was also more about how the Giants handled it with him, where he just felt like they were looking to move on at a certain point, and they did not value him despite what he had contributed. And so it was also that element of it. It wasn't just, hey, I want the most money. It was also the team that I've made my bones with here does not want me anymore. And I'm now also looking for somebody who appreciates me and for a change. So it was kind of mutual at the end. Mike says, do you think the Giants should trade for Matthew Stafford? I would, of course, pick up that phone and make that phone call. I would love to have a player like that. Um, I think that getting him out of Los Angeles though would be difficult. Obviously, the Rams could keep losing. But Matt Stafford's going. Matt Stafford would be traded to, if he were traded, he would be traded to a team to elevate them the same way he was traded over to the Los Angeles Rams to take them to a Super Bowl. He would not be coming to the 2-5 or 2-6 New York Giants to dig them out of a hole and get a wild card. You know what I mean? Joel, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, Pat, on that Burrow touchdown run, was Isaiah Simmons out of position for that play? It looked like he looped around and got caught at the line of scrimmage inside of the scraping to the outside. So, Joel, I don't believe he was out of position there. I think they intended to overload the front the way that they did with the blitz. And instead of rushing to contain while they had those double teams on the outside and down the field, they rushed to beat their men one-on-one, and they left some open A and B gaps there for Joe Burrow to sneak through. So that was my sense of what happened there on that play, was that they overloaded the front, and then their rush did not account for enough contain. But it looked like on that play that Simmons, especially based on how hard immediately he started taking off the second he saw it, it's kind of like, whoop, one of those. Also, Jason Pinnock, you'd love to your safeties, even with Tyler Nubin coming down and working on a double team, just too many backs to the ball. And, maybe that's a product of being a zone team that's usually facing the ball. Now you're playing man to man, and guys aren't as good as kind of whipping around and being able to do that. I think you need to be able to play man better than that, to recover better than that. But, that was a terrible play for sure. Terrible play for sure. Because really, I mean, they only let a couple big plays kill them, but those plays did kill them, right? Thank you for the super chat, Joel. Mike says, how likely is Neighbors going? Is it that Neighbors will play Sunday? Seems like it's possible, Mike, but until I see him fully participate and come out of it on the other end, I'm not going to say, hey, I think he's going to play. Dable pointed to his optimism that he will come back, but it was a serious concussion. So I do think it seems to be trending in the direction that he will be playing in the game, but we'll see how he comes out of it Thursday and Friday. Good signs on Wednesday, at least. Steven says, I hate we should be I hate we should be this. We should have won that game. You are what your record is, and it's not good. For sure. Yeah, that is, unfortunately, that's the reality. Manzo says we need to clean house in the quarterback room like we did with all the O-line from last year. Yeah, and listen, you saw a lot of the noise and the work that the Giants front office and the Giants organization did this year was the indication that they were looking to move on from Daniel Jones to draft his successor, that they feel like it needs to be turned over to. But obviously, they didn't turn it over enough, right? Mike says the offense needs to stop selling the defense short. The defense played as hard as they could until they eventually cracked because the offense wasn't productive at all. Same old story, right? You go to Wink Martindale's defense, trying to hold it together for the Brian Dable offense last year and unable to do so, even though the Giants defense led the NFL in takeaways, tied with the Baltimore Ravens last year, right? And we all saw, where that went, what that led to, the dysfunction, the fracturing of the coaching staff, defections, voluntary departures of several coaches, some fired as well. So, you don't want this to continue to become and to continue to be a situation where the defense is looking at the offense, desperate for any help, right? Any help whatsoever you can give us, and knowing though that it's not going to come. You can't be in that mode. That's a terribly unhealthy place for the Giants to be. All right, let's see. Pat, do you think the Giants would look into the trade market for a quarterback? The trade market for a quarterback, I mean, who are we talking about if there's a trade market for a QB? I mean, Tyrod's not coming back. See, I'm going through the divisions. AFC East, there's nobody there. AFC North, I mean, you already did the Russell Wilson thing. You're not bringing him, here. Justin Fields isn't leaving there. Justin Fields isn't your answer here either. I mean, the guy in Cincinnati, I guess, but Browning, but I guess you could make a call on a player like that. But again, Daniel Jones has a lot of physical skills that even some of the players that you guys would probably want to trade for don't, and these guys are middling players who are not going to change the trajectory of your franchise. I mean, they signed Drew Lock. They gave Drew Lock guaranteed money. So I mean, they do have to. On the one hand, you can't sit on your hands. On the other hand, they made this bed. This was their decision of how to proceed through this season after they didn't draft a quarterback. It was, we're going to run it back with Daniel. We're going to get him weapons. We're going to fix the offensive line. We're going to do all that. Now, then the question becomes, what happens if you ride it out with Daniel Jones and the bottom falls out? So, that's again, what I come back to is they can't, as an organization and as a front office and as a coaching staff, they cannot let it bottom out here. If it bottoms out, that's going to cost people jobs. So that's the concern. I mean, I don't know where the Matt Stafford thing came from. I mean, I brought up Stafford's name when we were talking post game on Sunday. I don't know if somebody took that and ran with it or something. But we were just talking about, if you could go out and desperately get a quarterback who clearly upgraded you, who would it be? And I was just going through the league looking at it. And I said that the Rams are 1-4 and they have Matt Stafford. So obviously that's a veteran who would upgrade you if they were selling at some point. But then what I said was that, Stafford, he's a veteran family man, a guy who won a Super Bowl for the Rams, who they're going to do right by. That's not a situation where that player is desperate to join a team that is, going nowhere or fighting for a wild card at best, or, that just doesn't add up to me. That's a dream scenario, but also, again, he's the kind of player that he's an elevator, a finishing piece. The Giants are not one quarterback away from being this amazing team. That's not what they are right now. So Intel, you ask about the Stafford rumors. Again, I don't know where they came from. I know it was more just about, looking at the landscape and feeling out which veterans on bad teams could be looking for better situations at first. But that's a guy near the end of his career, likes where he is. I don't know. I mean, the Rams did at one point, because of Stafford's salary, they did at one point consider, moving on and looking into moving on at one point, and then kind of came back to earth on that. They're also getting Cooper Kupp back, I believe, this week. They're playing the Raiders. Puka Nacua, I believe, is going to be back later in the season. I saw Sean McVay saying that he feels like they're very much in it. He's not despondent about the state of the team. Be interested to see what their trajectory looks like in a couple weeks here. But if you guys know where the actual rumors of this is actually coming from, other than us just kind of spitballing, you let me know. But no, I mean, I have not heard any legitimate Matthew Stafford reports or information from my conversations with people. Steven says, Pat, I don't get the coach taking a field goal in the Dallas game, not going for it. Then multi 4D calls on your side when if you don't get it. Oh, then multiple fourth down calls on your side when if you don't get it, it will cost you the game. When your offense has to do multiple fourth downs to keep drives going, it's broken. Yeah, Steven, I agree. This goes to a game management issue and a coaching issue that we've hit on before, which is that Brian Daboll's plan at sometimes does not look cohesive, and it is more of like a feel thing and a fly by the seat of your pants. How am I feeling in the moment, addressing the situation type thing, rather than governed by a defined philosophy. And for example, after the Cincinnati game, Daboll was saying that all week, yeah, we were talking about we were going to be aggressive against this team because they're high scoring. It's going to be a high scoring game. But in the first half, they had a 4th and 5 and 4th and 4 around their own 45 and 47, respectively, and they punted both of them. And then in the second half, when they were scoreless at halftime and it was desperation time, then suddenly he started going for everything, including that first one, I think at his own 36 that they didn't get, and the defense bailed them out. And so I saw that as reactionary coaching rather than like a strategy. Let's see. Mo Plaza says, Pat, do you want to see a Subway series? I'm a Yankees fan. Yes, I do. I would love a Subway series, especially with the way that the Giants season is going. I think that the way that the Giants season is going, the way that the Jets season is going, so the NFL. The Knicks are back, so that's going to carry the day as well as far as the attention and excitement level in the sports world. But if the NFL season is really going in the tank or on the verge of going in the tank here, just another great thing to kind of spice up the local sports scene. And yeah, no, I like the Yanks too. So pulling for the Bombers there for them to get there and do it. Stanley says, why is it that when players play for the Giants, they struggle, but when they go on other teams, they thrive? I don't think it's that with every player, Giants to another team. I think this happens with a lot of organizations, Stanley. When a player isn't a good fit in one team, sometimes that is just an indication that he's not a good fit there, but he might find a better one elsewhere. So this is kind of a running joke in a lot of franchises because when a player doesn't fit initially, usually he heads off and tries to find greener pastures and sometimes succeeds. It is kind of getting shoved in the Giants' face a little bit right now because, guys like Barkley, McKinney, even go back to like when Eric Flowers left the Giants and became like a serviceable guard. You know what I mean? Like a guy who was contributing as a guard and was actually not a bad player, right? And was able to kind of handle himself in that regard. Yeah. So, I mean, I do think that culture is important. I think that leadership is important. I believe, the word development is a little overrated when it comes to the NFL. I mean, you do develop players and teams, but I think it's more about the idea of, let's say, playing guys in the right positions, supporting them the way they need to be, whether it's coaching them to use their strengths and not asking them to do something that enhance or that exposes their weaknesses, right? Things like that. And then, so it's positive, it's smart utilization, it's Um, you know, when you're in a losing environment, like constant losing can wear on you. Sometimes you need to go somewhere where the team is a little bit better. Like for example, you know, if you're a facilitating point guard in basketball, the better the scores that you're playing with, the better point guard you're going to look. That's kind of a really dumbed down version of it, but you might be a quarterback like Daniel Jones, who 3 years from now, you end up on a different team with better weapons and a more consistently good offensive line, and you may have more success because there's just more support around you. And you might have a coach who manages end game situations better. So those are some of the issues. Johnny says, is Evan Neal's role right tackle or bust, or will we see him in another position before finally giving up on him? Johnny, they've talked the whole time as if he's just a right tackle. He's just a right tackle. He's just a right tackle. Dable today, for the first time, opened the door to Evan possibly working on the left at times if needed. They kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously, they're in desperation mode to find solutions with Andrew Thomas gone. Evan said that he would do it if they asked him to play on the left, he said it would be an adjustment, but not a major one, that he's done it before, obviously, in college. But the the truth, in my opinion, is that they want to do everything they can to not put him on the field, is the way it feels. That's the way it feels. I do think that if they were to put him on the field, it would be on the right side. I have been based on my conversations with a lot of people, clamoring to see him at like a left guard spot. Obviously, he would not be replacing a John Runyon or a Greg Van Roten or anything like that, but work him somewhere where it's going to take the biggest advantage of his skill set, and don't put him back in a position where if you're confident he's going to fail, if you put him back in a tackle, don't play him a tackle. See if he can play guard. I think the ship has sailed, though. Frankly, that's the way that they're treating him in my mind. Jay Farries, what's up? Jay Farries in the house. He says, "Do you ever run out of positive things to say about this team? We suck. Boom Chaga." I still need to bring some Boom Chaga into that locker room and get some of these Giants players on board, because need that, whether it's an energy boost or some antioxidants to get the blood flowing, get them going. They definitely need something. And that reminds me, Jay, thank you for checking in with the $5 super chat. But that reminds me, we are sponsored here by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. Natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today. Boomchaga.com. Again, that's boomchaga.com. Subscribe and save order. Order the bag with the code Talkin Ball 25. That's right here. There's a QR code on your screen as well you can use, and you'll get that 25% off. Subscribe and save. If you want to cancel the subscription after that, you can. No harm, no foul. They don't lock you in or anything. It's just a way to get the discount on the bag. So subscribe and save. Talkin Ball 25 at boomchaga.com. Also brought to you by MyBookie. MyBookie is celebrating its 10th year anniversary, and it is rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors. Stay tuned on Thursday for my risk-free MyBookie Thursday bet. We hit big last week, 10-3-1 against the spread, 2-1 on Pat's picks, and several of my Giants sprinkle props all hit, making you money if you're listening up on my social media feeds. So stay here on Thursday and on Saturday for more information that I'm going to give out on picks of the week and props of the week that you should play and you should hit. MyBookie.ag, though, is where you want to play those odds. If you're already on MyBookie, they have a new loyalty rewards program called MyBookie Plus. You can access free giveaways, exclusive promotions, get cash back in your account. If you want to make this a winning football season, you need to go to MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere, whether it's underdogs, overs, unders. You like the prop bets that I do. If you like those receiving ladders that we hit on with Tyrone Tracy Jr., whatever you like, you could do it at MyBookie. So use mybookie.ag. And here's the best part. If you go to MyBookie on the link in my bio and all my social media profiles, that's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Threads, that's PL on NFL. And if you go on X, my handle is PLeonardNYDN. Click on that link and use the promo code PATS Picks. That's PATSPICKS. And you will get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000, plus a $10 casino chip. So that's MyBookie. And finally, brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee, all natural specialty coffee with no sugar. Convenient for on-the-go coffee drinkers. Takes me 10 seconds to make an Estate 98 iced coffee and only a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. So thank you to our sponsors, and we keep rolling here on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. Talkin Ball live, that is, here on Wednesday, October 16th. Okay. Manzo says, at this point, it's clear to me that Daniel Jones is a coach killer and Shane and Dable are next. That's not fair to this regime. They need to draft their own quarterback. Well, they've had 3 years. I don't know how many years you think they should have. Of course, that will be up to ownership to decide whether or not they deserve an extra draft to go get a quarterback and develop one. I think that how many years can you run a stagnant or flat out bad and limited offense? Is it just the quarterback? I mean, that'll be up to them to judge. I do think they have enough belief in Daniel Jones that they would understand that some of it is Daniel, but some of it is not. And they have to be concerned about that, whether it's the game management issues, whether it's the drafting and personnel issues. So that's going to be up to John Mara and Steve Tisch to decide. Stanley says, do you think the Giants will draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, even though they are not known for drafting black quarterbacks? I think that they will draft the best quarterback available. I think we saw in Hard Knocks that they were eyeing not only Drake May, but also Jaden Daniels, who is a black quarterback. And I think that they want a talented quarterback. They want the best quarterback. So yes, if they deemed Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward the best quarterback and they had a chance to draft him and get him, then I do think they would. You saw on Hard Knocks, laid bare that they were talking about potentially trading up for Jaden Daniels. We also know that Drake May was a target of theirs with Daniels off the board at 2. OG says, I'm getting sick of hearing Daniel Jones has to play better. When are we going to see it besides a game here and there? Daniel Jones is trash, Pat. Hopefully he'll be better. Hopefully he'll be better is delusional. Oh no, I think he is what he is at this point. He is what he is. I agree with that. I'm just saying I don't think it would get better if you put in one of the backups. That's all I'm saying. Like in the here and now, that I don't think he's been good enough, but I don't think it would get better if you put in the backups. That's what I'm saying for the here and now. El Gigante, what's up? He says, hey, Pat, we are a quarterback away that challenges the length of the field. You mean to me if Daniel Stroud or even Purdy, we don't win this game? I think that they could be a quarterback away in some games. I don't think they're a quarterback away from being a strong team, though. That's not – so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I saw issues in the loss to Cincinnati, for example, where Daniel Jones was not the only reason, right? Now, listen, that interception in the red zone, terrible. Didn't like the play call either. But terrible turnover. I mean, yes, Jaden Daniels would help your team and improve your team. Yes, CJ Stroud, one of the best quarterback draft picks, basically the best quarterback draft pick since Patrick Mahomes. yes, of course, he elevates a team. And Brock Purdy, good player, but no, I don't know. I don't know if necessarily Purdy, overcomes what the Giants are right now. I wouldn't say that. D says, were the rumors true that McAdoo wanted to draft Mahomes, but he got overruled by Mara because of his loyalty to the Mannings? It is true that Ben McAdoo had a high opinion of Mahomes. Obviously, didn't win out in the end. That the Giants, it wasn't like the Giants went up and got Patrick Mahomes, obviously, and he was in the minority in loving Patrick Mahomes. But the idea that he quote unquote got overruled, I don't know how that conversation went specifically, but yes, he did like him, and they didn't end up taking him. So McAdoo did have a high opinion of him. All right, let's see. D-Pat says, why did the Cowboys work with the Eagles to steal Devontae Smith from Gettleman? Did the Cowboys trade with the Eagles to stick it to the G-men? I remember that definitely had that feeling of them kind of colluding in a sense or collaborating to screw the Giants at that time. There was definitely an awareness of the fact that the Giants wanted Devontae Smith. And so the Eagles, knowing that, made that move and went up and got him. So that was the genesis of that. Essentially, it was odd that the Cowboys enabled that and helped them with that. And then, of course, the Giants went with a double whammy by trading out and not taking Micah Parsons. And then the Cowboys get Micah Parsons. So huge swing there as the Giants move back, get an extra draft pick for the next year in the first round, but also take Kadarius Toney, who flamed out with them. Yeah, that was interesting. The Cowboys and the Eagles, that was an interesting time too. Remember, the Eagles tanked the final game of a season to prevent the Giants from winning the division and getting into the playoffs as well. So there's a rivalry here that goes beyond the field. It goes all the way up to the owner's box with Lurie and Mara, and Howie Roseman very much involved in that as well. And the Eagles and the Giants are always trying to stick it to each other. They hate each other. And so, that was interesting, though, that the Cowboys enabled that to happen. OG says, Daniel Jones must be related to someone important that we don't know, because never in my life have I heard more excuses for one guy. Already explained that Burrow run, Steven, I think. If I didn't, let me know, but I think I did. Yeah, Joel asked about that as well. Let's see. NYC says, what are you talking about? They've been bad at home since last year. They were bad everywhere last year, NYC. I don't know if you remember that. But they were pretty bad everywhere. But yeah, no, that was under Daboll too, though. I was talking about they've played tense at home now for several years because they've been losing a lot. That's one thing I think that hasn't helped. Obviously, the fans not showing up at games in a lot of these years under previous coaching staffs and in these seasons where they hit the skids, especially being eliminated from playoff contention fairly early in a lot of these games or in a lot of these seasons. So that doesn't help, and it becomes cumulative. But yeah, certainly, last season they were, 6-11 overall. And they were not a good home team. They were not a good road team. They were not a good team. So totally agree with you. John says, Pat, do you think secretly Daboll wants to get fired, not understanding why he refuses to bench Daniel Jones now with Andrew Thomas out? He's going to get hurt, 100% guarantee. Well, John, so to me, they have judged that Daniel is the best quarterback in their building. That's the way I see it. Now, I do realize as I sit here with you guys right now, I have not asked the question this week yet of Daboll whether any other quarterbacks are getting first team reps. I have no reason to believe that anyone else has, but I have asked that at other points. So that's worth asking Brian Daboll to see if that's the case. But I have no indication at this moment that has happened yet. Daniel. So the injury guarantee is a factor and could be a factor down the road. But I believe that Brian Daboll is coaching for his job, and Joe Shane might be, operating this team for his job as well. This team has gone 9-7-1. They made the playoffs, won a playoff game. They were 3-6-1 at the end of that season. They followed up with a 6-11 year where rampant firings and voluntary staff departures and just a terrible environment, toxic environment, and dysfunctional. And now this year they're 2-4, and now their franchise tackle is down. They need to win some games. So, John, are you saying bench him so you don't lock in the $23 million guarantee for next year? Because if that's the only reason you're benching him, to me, you're benching him to try to improve the offense and win games if you're benching him. And then, yes, I guess we started this conversation talking about that if the bottom falls out, like Jacob asked about, if you get to the bye week, does he get benched then? I mean, if you lose 3 of the next 4 or all the next 4 and you bench Daniel Jones at the bye week, I mean, how is Brian Daboll the head coach here next year? So I think I almost see that. I don't know. I kind of see that the opposite way. It's like if he wanted to get fired, the move would be to, rip the Band-Aid off now, go to a worse quarterback or a quarterback who hasn't performed as well in practices, and just play out the string, play your only card, your only trump card early in the game, and then have nowhere else to go and play out the string. I mean, does he secretly want to get fired? No, I mean, these are big time jobs that, you might never get again. But do I think he knows that he could get fired? Yes, I do. Yes, I do believe so. Yes, I do believe he understands the consequences if they don't win. Betch says Brian Daboll told Daniel Jones to throw that ball across his body to Theo Johnson. In the scripted plays, they ran the exact same play. Daniel Jones hit the running back. Ain't no way he's doing high school stuff 2 series later, especially when the coach was so aggressive that he went for 5 fourth downs. He's definitely telling Daniel Jones who he wants him to throw to. That's interesting, Betch. That's an interesting observation and theory. Definitely think too that is an ill-advised play in general. Even the 4th down play where they didn't get it at the end, when instead of kicking the 54-yard field goal on the 4th and 6, 2 of the routes were down the field, not really helping them to get a 4th and 6. And Tyrone Tracy was pretty far back behind the line of scrimmage, flaring out. Slayton and Wandale, out of the 5 routes, were really the only 2 options for Daniel Jones on that play. And then because of the pressure, he didn't have time to wait for Wandale. H5000 says, Joe Shane was really talking up sports medicine and how the training and medical groups would be evaluated when he joined the Giants. The results, as many injuries or more. Very well said, H5000. Still not sufficient ground gained in those areas. Again, Ronnie Barnes, the training staff. Now they've added Aaron Wellman to the mix on the training and the kind of the management side of things. And they're putting a lot of resources into that, but they were staying relatively healthy early outside of the Graham Gano snafu, which was ridiculous mismanagement and decision-making. And then obviously Neighbors had the concussion and other depth injuries, but a lot of their top guys had stayed on the field, which was helping. But then Devin Singletary goes down as well. But now Andrew Thomas, Kayvon Thibodeau, you're starting to see it really pile up. Jamie Gillen gets hurt in practice. So definitely same old Giants when it comes to that stuff. Kyle says the Giants are dying for a home win, and if that doesn't happen this week against the Eagles, the thermometer is going to get hot for the entire organization. Exactly, Kyle. Exactly. Well said. OG says people are upset with Brian Daboll's play calling, but not realizing he is a bum quarterback no matter what play he calls. He didn't have a problem calling plays in Buffalo. Yeah, comparing Daniel Jones to Josh Allen, though, is not doing anything. Like, Josh Allen is a top 2 quarterback in the NFL. I mean, of course, if you have a top 2 quarterback in the NFL, your team's going to be better. Aziki says, if Tyrod Taylor was on this team, we would be 4-2. That is possible. Tyrod was better than Daniel when he was here. D says, but Tyrod is more injury prone maybe than Daniel, and he's older. He's fragile. Steven points out that the Giants fans were patient on Sunday night because it was competitive, ugly, but competitive. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, yeah, they were definitely, especially when your defense plays well, the crowd stays behind the team usually, right? Like defense gets a crowd going, dominating an opposing offense. I mean, the opening drive touchdown didn't help, but when the defense was making big plays and continually getting the Bengals off the field, the crowd was very much in it. Yeah, no, Steven, I agree. I was more pointing out that the crowd was super negative week 1 and essentially said, we're over this, but they still came back for a game, like a primetime game against the Bengals, and they were in it and ready to go. And just the Giants couldn't deliver, especially offensively. Mike K says backs to the ball because it was man coverage. That's what you're supposed to do. No, Mike, but you don't understand that. Yes, your back does turn to the ball if you're in man coverage more so than in zone. Yes, correct. That's what I'm observing. But you don't have everybody in coverage in the secondary all with their backs to the ball, not watching the quarterback who's sprinting down the field until he's 25 yards down the field. So, yes, playing man to man has you running with those receivers, which tends to turn your back to the ball. But you have safeties for a reason. You have linebackers for a reason. And again, like I said, the pass rush needs to account for those players having their backs to the ball. And it can't be a upfield one-on-one, leaving all these rush lanes open for the quarterback to escape like that. So it's on the awareness of the players downfield to turn around, use their eyes, right? You can have your back to the ball, but still have awareness and use your eyes in space. I mean, that's incumbent upon you. But then also my point was as well that those rush lanes were with the overload front and with the way that they rushed, enabled Burrow to get out quickly and gain speed and off to the races. And that was that. OG says, honestly, if you think about it, the Giants' history of drafting quarterbacks is poor. Phil Simms and Eli Manning, that is it. Intel says, honest answer, do you think Shane and Dable are going to get fired? I still think it's on the table if it hits rock bottom. Yes, I do. I think that I have a hard time believing Dable is going to be the coach here next year. And then we'll see about the general manager. But again, it depends. Like, that's why there's so much riding on a game like this. If you beat the Eagles here and you shove it in Saquon's face and, you figure out a way to have an explosive offense, even without Andrew Thomas, and Daniel Jones plays well, and you score 25 or 30 points at MetLife Stadium, and you beat the Eagles for a second straight time now because you beat them at the end of last year. How different is that versus laying another egg, scoring 10 points, losing to the Eagles? Saquon runs wild after you let him go there, even though John Mara didn't want him out of the building, even though his teammates didn't want him off the team and out of the building. I mean, that's why there's so much riding on this game. Mike says, I'm so disappointed. Defense did everything they needed to do on their end to win against Cincinnati. Limited Chase, Burrow, 0 touchdown passes, Higgins to a lesser degree as well. Same thing kept happening last year versus the Bills and Jets, for example. OG says Daniel Jones or Dable shouldn't get fired. All the excuses for Daniel Jones, but none for Dable having a bum quarterback. How come Josh Allen wasn't complaining about Dable's play calling? Because he is a top 2 quarterback in the NFL. Let's see. C says Dable needs to play lock and see how this offense plays out. They need to give the fans some hope that the season is not a waste. OG says, but get rid of Dable and get who? Let's be honest. The Giants' track record of picking the right head coach isn't great either. So get who? I mean, that's ownership's job is to make better hires. They haven't made good enough hires. Your job would be to make better hires. There are several intriguing candidates. Ben Johnson, Detroit would be top of the list. Bobby Slowick in Houston is an interesting one. Brian Flores, of course, a guy that they had on their radar before. Brian Flores is somebody to keep an eye on as well. Although I don't know, maybe the lawsuit and the wrong Brian alleged texts from Bill Belichick maybe not sitting well, and maybe that ship has sailed, right? So, but let's see, who else do we have? Of course, Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick out there. Got a bunch of Titans guys in the building. I don't know if Mike Vrabel though would be John Mara's cup of tea. Let's see. But OG, that's also like saying if you're fed up with Daniel Jones, you'd say, well, the Giants don't have a track record of picking good quarterbacks, right? So that by your argument, you'd be saying, well, why get rid of Daniel Jones if we never pick good quarterbacks anyway once we do, right? So the bottom line is winning games is what matters. And that's why after that Seattle game, even though they almost coughed it up at the end, they played a pretty good game with a good game plan from Dable, and they deserved praise. After the Cincinnati game, it flips. And I'll tell you what, the players were more negative and realistic about that game than I really even I was surprised at how candid they were about how big of a regression that was. They didn't use that word, but they were very shell-shocked about it. Was almost like, wait, we came home from Seattle. We thought we had something. What the heck was that? Like they were very kind of startled by their inability to really do anything against Cincinnati. Mark B points out that chaga is the king of mushrooms. That's right. Let's see. Jay says they are the only ones with belief in Daniel Jones, and they are way smarter than us. Jeff says, Pat, do you think the reason they're keeping Neal off the field is to ensure he's healthy so they can trade him? Jeff, that could be a possibility, except I honestly don't know what the reason is for keeping him around if they're not going to use him and they don't have confidence in him, other than just avoiding putting him on the field to look worse about the draft pick, maybe. I mean, to me, Jeff, it would be hard to trade a player like that who has put a lot of bad football on tape and get a lot for him. Like, would a team give you more than a conditional 7th for Evan Neal right now? I don't know. I mean, the last time he played football, he didn't play well, and he's had injuries. And he's had like maturity issues that you hope that he's over now. But, I don't see that as the reason because I don't think he would fetch anything. A2 says, hey, Pat, I have a feeling both Shane and Dable have been given personal assurances that their jobs are not tied to Jones' success. Just a hunch. I don't think that's not that I know of. I don't think so. But you might be right, A2. Like if you're saying, hey, they're just letting it play out, playing out the string. But A2, remember too, John Mara was on board with, at least what he said, he was on board with them going and drafting another quarterback and having that quarterback compete with Daniel Jones for the job. So he's flipping from that to, you have to play this quarterback and I won't fire you no matter what. I don't know. Not to mention, okay, let's say that's the case. Their job was still to give Daniel the best chance to succeed. Did they do that? I mean, if they keep losing games and scoring 7 points a game, can you say that? I don't know. John says, I asked that question because I've seen other people say Brian Daboll won't be fired. Keeping Daniel Jones as starter does give the Giants the best chance, but the Giants need to draft one of the top 4 quarterbacks coming out. Yeah, anyone who says that Brian Daboll definitely is not going to be fired. I mean, I think that usually the Giants and NFL, other teams do this too. It's not just the Giants, but I do think when there's a lot of pressure and a lot of criticism, the first move of this organization, a lot of organizations, is to rush to some sort of public defense in that regard, whether it's leaks to team-friendly reporters or the team saying it themselves in some form to a national reporter or whatever it is. Or maybe it's Daboll going to a reporter and saying, you could say it's from the team or whatever it is. But that's also often the first step is like if something's crumbling, first it's we believe in this guy, and then it's we believe in this guy still, but we need to see progress. And then it's we don't like what we're seeing. This is still our guy, but it needs to turn around and then fired and out, right? That's usually how it goes. Um, if you remember before, like with a few weeks to go in that season, Joe Judge's final season, believe was it John Mara who went on the record and said with Schefter that where Schefter reported that the Giants had given Judge assurances he would be back, something along those lines. And then like 3 or 4 weeks later, he was fired. Obviously, you had the press conference and the goal line runs that, of course, kind of accelerated the situation there. But and this is not just the Giants either. This happens in other organizations as well. Those comments can things change. Things change. Benji says, when are we going to change the turf? Also a big problem we keep ignoring. They have changed the turf a couple times, Benji. I think that even though the turf has been a problem in the past, I believe it is now used as an excuse for their injuries when their issues are not the turf. It is, as far as their team's injuries, it is there's something wrong with their preparation and management of these players' bodies. John says, we watched John Mara on Hard Knocks not wanting to give up draft capital to go get one Jaden Daniels, right? You can correct me if I'm wrong. Not wanting them to give up draft capital to go get Jaden Daniels? No, I don't remember that. Didn't the front office talk about going to get him? And then it just never came to pass. And I think what happened was Shane explained the scenarios of what would happen if they couldn't do it. Steven says, you explained the Burrow run earlier. Let's see. FYI, I park in the back lot P at games, and it was pretty empty Sunday night. Also, a lot of empty seats by me. The no-shows are happening already. That's interesting, Steven. Thank you for sharing that. From my vantage point, it was hard to tell. Especially they darkened the stadium a lot. They had everybody with the flashing lights, so it kind of created a cool atmosphere. But that's interesting. That's good. That's good information. John says MetLife is going to hold World Cup games, so they will change it soon, maybe after this season. Well, they need grass in there for the World Cup. So that's what's interesting is that there's no grass there for football, but they will have to have grass in there for the World Cup. Yeah, D, my opinion of the turf is that they have changed it a couple times. It used to be a major problem. I do think the new turf is something that the players like better. It's a kind of a combo grass turf, like a hybrid. I think that it's a crutch now to say that their turf is the reason for their injuries. That's not, that is more of a crutch now, in my opinion. Let's see. John says, regarding Daniel Jones, I think he has PTSD at home. He's the most booed New York sports player, and people harass him off the field. I know it's to the point where, there's probably no turning back. It's just based on whether he wins or not. He just has to win or else. OG says Tom Brady complained about the play calling in New England, and he's the GOAT. Look at Aaron Rodgers complaining in New York now. Let Brandon Brown pick the next quarterback, OG says. A2 says, I didn't say any of my hunches were correct, Pat. Brett says, Pat, how did Andrew Thomas get injured? He got hurt on the touchdown drive in the third quarter. One of those plays. He came up limping, and he stayed in, but he was hobbling and clearly ailing. And it just happened during that drive. And he pressed through, played through a lot of pain. I'm not quite sure why they let him play through that all the way through the game and to finish. Maybe that was not wise. I don't know whether that worsened the injury or not, but really a shame. John says, Pat, have you heard if the Giants have any interest in Devin White? Weren't they trying to trade for him in 2023? He would be a major upgrade over Micah McFadden, who has been bad lately, keeps going to the wrong gap. No. And based on the fact that Devin White was unable to gain any playing time or stick in Philadelphia, a team that is desperate for good linebackers, that doesn't seem like he would be a solution at all. But jumping around the league a little bit, I wanted to talk also about the wide receiver trades this week. How about Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper to the Jets and Bills, respectively? I personally believe that the Amari Cooper trade this season for 2024 is going to produce more results and pay bigger dividends for Buffalo than Devontae Adams will for the Jets. I think Adams, Rodgers, that chemistry, of course, is exciting. But Rodgers, again, throwing Mike Williams under the bus, calling out his wrong route, that type of stuff. Like, get that stuff out of here. I mean, it's a bad culture. The Jets franchise is lost. They didn't even let Robert Saleh change the play caller before firing him. I think that that's another team that if they have one or two, I'm not wishing anything on anybody. I hope they stay healthy, but if they have one or two injuries to the wrong guys, it could really fall apart fast. I thought that loss to Buffalo was a huge L for them to take, even though it's early in the season. It was a bad loss for them at home. And remember, even though they only lost by 3, which pushed for bettors, for all those my bookie bettors, you get the push there instead of the win. That was my 1 in my 10-3-1. But, they had the Hail Mary at the end of the second quarter, which, first of all, Sean McDermott admitted going into the locker room that he wasn't playing for the Hail Mary. He was playing for the sidelines as far as the scheme. And then they needed to do a better job of knocking the ball down. How are you not playing for the Hail Mary there? And how are you not rushing more guys at Aaron Rodgers there? This is the king of the Hail Mary. That's obviously what they're going for. What do you care about giving a field goal up there? Like McDermott, I mean, I just don't understand it. But, I think that the Aaron Rodgers situation with Devontae Adams, you have Devontae Adams, you have Garrett Wilson, you have a lot of explosiveness there. But again, are the Jets a receiver away? Is that what they need? They need one more receiver and everything will be fine. Is Rodgers going to play better because of Adams? We'll see. We'll see if he's going to turn him back into the old Aaron Rodgers. But I think that the Amari Cooper trade to Buffalo is important because now, listen, Buffalo proved in that game and in these last few weeks that they have plenty of work to do as well, right? So the Bills aren't perfect, and I'm not saying that they're a world beater team, but as we've mentioned him a lot in this chat, he is Josh Allen. John says Rodgers is a diva, and I'm happy for Josh Allen to get Cooper. And here's the thing about the Buffalo Bills. Kind of like the Dallas Cowboys this year, not the same exact thing, but kind of like the Dallas Cowboys, the Buffalo Bills put this group of skill players on the field to start the season where everybody said they need more than this, right? And I know the CeeDee Lamb's on Dallas, but I'm just saying those are two teams that consider themselves, if not contenders, then teams that want to be contenders or teams that should be winning their division. And yet you look at it and it's like they're asking their quarterback to do a lot without the amount of weapons that they should really have at their disposal. And of course, Buffalo is clearly extremely grateful to get Stephon Diggs out of the building and get that kind of diva behavior and detrimental behavior and like subtweeting of your quarterback out of the building. And I know that, they have less ego in those skill position rooms now. And James Cook's a really good player. They have some talent elsewhere, but I think that Cooper, the top receiver position for the Bills, I think was missing, whereas Garrett Wilson is a number 1 wide receiver with the Jets. The Bills didn't have one. And not that fixes all of their problems either as a team, but I think it's really just hero ball on Josh Allen right now. And I think Amari Cooper gives you an extremely savvy veteran that if Josh Allen gives him chances and opportunities and develops some chemistry with him on some back shoulders and things like that, I think he really will elevate them and turn their offense into something that's increasingly explosive. I don't know what that means for their Super Bowl hopes, but I do know that, when Josh Allen has a supremely talented and excellent wide receiver, it usually turns into something big and something explosive. And that's what we saw with Stephon Diggs. So, by the way, that was the name I meant to mention earlier. I'm not sure if this guy will be a good head coach or not, but Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of the Bills, I think his name might come back up again here. I see this Amari Cooper trade happening. Once James Cook gets back, you have Josh Allen, James Cook, Amari Cooper. They've got a good tight end core, Dalton Kincaid. They also have Khalil Shakir in the slot. I could see that offense maybe taking off a little bit more and getting back to the level that the Bills have been at in previous years. And maybe Joe Brady gets hot again as a head coaching candidate off of that. So that's another one that I would watch. Again, I'm not saying he would be a great head coach. I don't know, but I do think his name might come up a little bit more. Young Hendrick says, I'm sure you touched on the subject already, but I joined in. Illuminor to left tackle and Neal to right, or Azudu starts at left. Young Hendricks, it sounds right now like it's going to be Azudu at the left and Illuminor at the right and Neal still as a backup. That's how it looked and came off to me after talking to Dable, Neal, Azudu, Illuminor on Wednesday and observing the early part of practice. Dable did say they would try a bunch of different things during the week and see where they settle, but Illuminor said that he prefers right tackle, even though he'd be willing to play the left if they need him. And I don't personally think they have an appetite to play Evan Neal. So I'm not sure. Even if Illuminor went to left tackle, I think it's possible Azudu would be the right tackle. Brett says the Bills saved me. I won $750 on a $2 bet. 9 teams correct. Well done, Brett. Hopefully you did it on my bookie. Good job, though. Cash that in. Matthew says, it seems to me that if the Giants lose to Philly and Washington, they are 0-4 in the division, no wild card coming from the NFC East. Do they then bench Daniel Jones? Season is over. Too much to risk with the injury guarantee. But again, now to me, you're talking about, are they guaranteed to have a job if the season goes in the tank? Like if they bench Daniel Jones and they lose out for a high draft pick, are you telling me that they are automatically going to be the GM and coach next year? I mean, that's dicey there. Stanley says, do you think the Giants will beat the Eagles Sunday since it's not on primetime, but it's still at MetLife Stadium? Good question, Stanley. Yeah, right. Out of prime time, so let's do it. I think it's going to be kind of an ugly, mistake-filled game. Yes, because I think both teams have problems. I think the Eagles will score some points on the Giants. And I think the Giants can score points in the Eagles. Like I think the Eagles have the kind of defense that doesn't tackle well that Malik Neighbors could finally end up with like a 70-yard touchdown in this game if he plays, but not because Daniel Jones throws it 50 yards down the field to him. I think the Eagles are a bad enough tackling team, problematic enough with their defense, that if you get Neighbors a catch and run in the right scenario on them, I think this would be the right defense for him to have an explosive big-time touchdown. So if he plays, look for one of my Giant sprinkle props might be like a Neighbors touchdown over a certain amount of yards. So I don't think the Giants will win. I think the Andrew Thomas injury is a big deal, but they have a chance to win. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they don't have a chance to beat a kind of a reeling Eagles team. But remember, Saquon, this is personal. Brett says the refs did everything they could for the Jets to win, and they still lost. And it was only close because of the Hail Mary. Brett wants to know if they make a move for tackle, the Giants. I mean, they didn't make a move for a tackle all offseason. They're just going to make one now. And then again, if they were to trade a significant asset for a tackle right now, that would tell you again how much pressure they're under. But also, teams don't trade really good tackles. Like, they need them. So at this juncture, it's very difficult to get a really good tackle. MJ says Josh Azudu got Daniel Jones hurt last year and might do it again this year now. Yeah, Josh is a great guy, but that was a tough situation, and now he might be put back into it. Brett says, why have they not practiced Neal at another position? I have no idea. I ask it every time we talk to the assistants, and there's never an acceptable explanation. Michael says, it's a mess now with their best tackle gone, and I just hope it's an entertaining game. I don't see more than maybe 5 wins. Yep. Picked 4 wins at the start of the season. John says Daniel Bellinger and Theo are going to be busy chipping with Andrew Thomas out. And is Devin Singletary still RB1, or will he be splitting with Tracy? I think it'll be a split at least. I think Tracy has earned the right to be the number 1 back with Singletary in the supporting and complementary role. So 50-50, 60-40, whatever it is. I think Chris Manhertz is the guy to look for as the blocker, constantly chipping. Better blocker than Daniel Bellinger and Theo, but Theo will be on the field a lot. Daniel Bellinger has not been playing a lot. Theo's been playing a lot, and then Manhertz after that. So yeah, maybe they end up having to go heavier again to help the offensive line. But again, they've run the ball better out of 11. MJ says Daniel Jones, 42 touchdowns and 14 interceptions on the road. Shows he can be a good quarterback, but the guy just can't play at home and at night for some reason. Not everyone is built for New York. John says maybe Daniel Jones can run on Philly at MetLife for a touchdown and fingers crossed not trip over his own feet. What a highlight that was. Brett says fans are the reason. So the people hating on Daniel Jones and the atmosphere is the reason for Daniel Jones struggling at home. All right. So I did not do the Estate 98 trivia question. So we're going to do that now, right at the end of the chat. So Estate 98 Coffee, one of our sponsors, we're going to do a Giants trivia question. And I ask a trivia question. The first person to answer this correctly in the chat gets a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. So I'm going to ask you a trivia question, Giants related. And what you're going to do is when you hear the trivia question, you're going to enter it into the chat, your answer. The first person to answer this correctly in the chat will win a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. So here's the trivia question. The 47-yard rushing touchdown by Cincinnati's Joe Burrow on Sunday tied for the longest run by a quarterback against the Giants since the 1970 merger. So there was one other quarterback who also rushed for 47 yards against the Giants in MetLife Stadium. Honestly, it's been within the last 15 years, I'll say. So within the last 15 years. So Joe Burrow's 47-yard rushing touchdown tied for the longest run, not the longest quarterback run, the longest run by a quarterback against the Giants since the 1970 merger. It was done by which quarterback? Quarterback did not score on the run, but it was a 47-yarder tied for the longest run against the Giants by a quarterback since the merger. Let's see. Matthew says, do you think the Giants management want to pay Daniel Jones $35 million next year? If not, better to bench him. I have to think even Mara realizes that. I mean, they're not acting like it. Intel says, Pat, it's time to move on from Daniel Jones. Sorry, nothing is going to change. Stanley says, is Daniel Jones aware fans were burning his jersey after his horrible play against Minnesota? I think he is. He has not told me that, but his family and friends inform him of what's going on. He understands how bad it is. Remember the fans yelling at him and booing him coming out of the stadium after that game. All right, so the Estate 98 trivia question. The guesses have been Dave Meggett, Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, Tyra Taylor. No. This quarterback ran for 47 yards in MetLife Stadium against the Giants, tied with Joe Burrow for the longest run by a quarterback against the Giants since the 1970 merger. I'll let you guys keep throwing in those guesses. As I remind everyone, we are sponsored here by MyBookie. MyBookie is celebrating its 10th year anniversary, rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors. All of you I know used the Pat's picks last week and made a killing, including on those props. Like I said, look for the risk-free Thursday bet coming in from my bookie tomorrow, October 17th. And that will be for probably an ugly but an interesting game nonetheless, with Sean Payton going back to New Orleans with the Denver Broncos. So look for the risk-free Thursday bet at MyBookie. And also, if you're a MyBookie member already, MyBookie Plus is their new loyalty rewards program. You'll get cash back in your account, exclusive giveaways and promotions. But the best deal going right now is if you open an account as a new user on mybookie.ag, use the link in any of my social media profiles and use the promo code PATSPICKS, and you will get a 100% match on your first deposit of $50 or more, up to $1,000 plus a $10 casino chip. Whether you like betting on the underdogs, the overs, the unders, the props that I love, those ladders, those sprinkles, let's win with MyBookie. Bet anytime, anywhere, anything, and make this football season a winning season. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the promo code Talkin Ball 25 or access it through the QR code on your screen right here, and this is the Boom Chaga right here, this bag, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And brought to you by our Estate 98 coffee. Estate 98 is an all-natural specialty coffee with no sugar, convenient for on-the-go coffee drinkers. It takes me only 10 seconds to make an Estate 98 iced coffee. It's delicious. Also a minute more to make a hot coffee or latte. Go to estate98.com/Talkin Ball to get a special buy one, get one free deal. That's basically a month's supply of coffee for half the price. And guys, thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for all the questions and the likes. Please hit those likes while we are still live before you leave. But all of that supports our channel. Thank you so much. But the best way to support this podcast and this channel to help us keep growing is to try out a little account on MyBookie, win some money there. It's to try out a bag of Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. It's to try a bottle of Estate 98 coffee. All of those purchases help support us. So the advertisers see that our loyal listeners and followers are going and using these products. Really appreciate all the support. Brett says we need a hint, Pat. No, you do not, Brett, because somebody got the answer correct, and that would be John. John says Cam Newton. The answer is Cam Newton. Cam Newton rushed for 47 yards against the Giants in MetLife Stadium on December 20th, 2015. Did not score on the run, as I said, but Cam Newton and Joe Burrow now tied for the longest run against the Giants by a quarterback since the 1970 merger. Even John can't believe it. John, send me your address or a P.O. box wherever you want me to send the Estate 98 coffee, and I will have a bottle of that Estate 98 sent out to you. Estate 98 will send it directly to you. Promise you'll love it. You'll love it for iced coffee. If you like hot coffee or lattes, you can use it for that. Also good for as like a coffee mixer. If you make an espresso martinis, things like that, kind of coffee right there, tablespoon of it, ready, set, go. But yeah, so John, send me your address on Instagram. If you have Instagram, go on in my direct messages, and my account there is PL on NFL. Send me your address or PO box, wherever you want that mailed on Instagram, and I'll get that out to you. Congratulations on getting that trivia question correct. A2Z Me says Daniel Jones is going to walk away from New York with over $100 million in his bank account. I have very little sympathy for multimillionaires who suck at their job. Sorry, not sorry. And Michael says, yes, that's pretty wild that they would agree to use real grass field for World Cup, and NFL refuses to tell teams to use grass. No doubt the NFL players don't love that, obviously, because of all the money, the time, and their bodies that they invest in the game. Guys, thank you so much for being here for another episode of Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. John, shoot me that link, John, send me that address on Instagram, please, so I can get that Estate 98 out to you. Thanks to my bookie and Boom Chaga and Estate 98 and to the Believe Network for helping us host this live chat, this Giants and NFL live chat on YouTube. Our next chat will be Sunday post-game from MetLife Stadium after Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles invade MetLife Stadium and the Giants try to fend them off. Joe Shane and Saquon Barkley both out to prove their point. Both teams on the verge of on the precipice of possible collapse, coaches on the hot seat, Eagles reeling, Giants struggling. Which team is going to get out of it? Which team is going to make a statement and which team is going to get right while the other slides? Looking forward to that. Looking forward to our post-game live when I come out of the Giants locker room from MetLife Stadium in the press box. Can't wait to talk to you guys then. Please follow all of my social media throughout the rest of the week for my Pat's picks, courtesy of my bookie, and all of that information that can help you guys win money this coming weekend on game day. Brett says, thank you, Pat. Mark says, great job, Pat. Thanks. And John says, thank you as well. Sent you the info. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everyone listening on the Believe Network, on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you get your pods. I will see you next time on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard.